Welcome to Rebel Chaser. My name is Gail, and this is part 2 from Judge Wolf. I tried to break it up into morning and afternoon, so you guys get to watch her testimony. That should be interesting. Anyway, I'll let you guys watch.
He needs to come back to the stand, please. Dunham. Mr. Holly, I believe you are still cross-examining.
Yes, sir. Mr. Dunham, when did you first let Miss Roberts know that Miss Dunham had a lawyer? Me, representing her.
I would say the first day I talked to her. First day I went in to talk to her.
Do you remember about when that was?
I'd say middle of October. I'd say October 10th, 12th.
Okay. So you informed her then that I was representing Miss Dunham?
Yeah.
Okay. So you had retained her in the middle of October?
It was later on, like towards the 20th.
Okay.
19th, 20th.
All right. Do you have any reason at all why she didn't serve me with the divorce papers?
I don't know. Like I said, it was like whenever I retained her, she wrote everything up. I come in and then I looked them over, and then she was going to put them to the court, and then that's whenever she went rogue for 3 weeks. And I didn't talk to her till after November.
Well, from October to November 13th?
3 weeks.
Yeah, okay. And
she had all the paperwork filled out, and I thought it was filed. And that's whenever I started. A week after that, I checked in. She said, "Well, I'm about to send it out." That was towards the end of October, and then that's why I didn't hear from her.
again, just to be clear, when did you first tell Miss Roberts that you wanted to terminate her services?
Whenever she called after I hadn't heard from her, probably about middle of November. Yes, whenever she called after she finally come back.
Was it before or after you signed the documents?
It was after.
Okay. So a couple of days after you signed these documents, then you told her that you wanted to terminate her services.
Yeah, because I already signed them and I hadn't been able to talk to her, get a hold of her. I didn't know what to do, so I met her and signed it. And then she called a few days later, and I said, "I've been trying to get a hold of you, trying to get a hold of you." I said, "I've left message after message." I said, "I signed the paper. She not letting me see my kids, and I said, I don't know what to do. I didn't know where to go. She took my stuff, broke in and took my stuff. And she said, "Well, you should have never signed them papers. I told you not to sign them papers. Or sign any kind of papers." And I said, "Well, I did."
Okay. At the time you did sign the uncontested divorce paperwork, though, we're fair to say that there was nothing on file as far as a contested divorce.
When was that?
At the time you signed the uncontested paperwork, which I believe we've established was November the 13th.
Yes.
There was no contested paperwork that was filed.
Not filed, I don't guess, because she never did file it. She had it wrote up. I guess it never got filed.
Okay.
You may.
Termination of legal services letter that you actually wrote to Ms. Roberts?
I never wrote it, but yeah, it's something she sent me.
Okay.
Kara sent it to me and said this would be a good way to terminate her.
And you signed it and
And
sent
then
it?
and then I signed it, yeah.
Okay. So you relied on Ms. Dunham to help you with that as well?
Yeah, I got a lot of text messages. I asked her, I didn't know what to do. I was like, I haven't been able to get a hold of her. I don't know what to do.
And you said per our phone conversation, which you're talking about the phone conversation you had originally with her that we talked about, which was around the time that shortly after that you signed the paperwork.
Yeah.
Okay. And if you can, read that middle paragraph, please, for the record.
As we discussed, I am terminating this relationship because I have come to an agreement with my wife for an uncontested divorce agreement and parenting plan. I called your office to cancel the contested divorce paperwork I had signed with you. I had to leave a message. At the time I signed the uncontested paperwork with my wife, the clerk's office did not have anything filed. When I talked to you the next day, I informed you of the agreement and my intention to not use your services and to have you not file the divorce paperwork you had. I later found out your office had filed paperwork.
All right. Is everything in that paragraph true and accurate?
Pretty much, I guess. Let me see. Yeah, but it's not completely because I actually left 3 or 4 messages, and I went to the office a couple times.
All right. Judge, if I may, Exhibit 9.
Right. Who wrote that letter?
You did?
Who did? Or your wife wrote the letter to
Yeah.
terminate your lawyer services? I was wondering because the way you were reading it. So.
Yeah, she
Okay.
did.
Yeah, that's.
Turn your microphone on, please.
Mr. Hawley made mention of the date that the complaint by Ms. Roberts was filed and in correlation with when he signed, and I think those documents speak for themselves, and they're actually on the same date. It's November
the 13th.
Yes, I just wanted the court to be aware because he was asking that question, and the dates speak for themselves.
Yes, sir. And it all is on the 13th, but the service was on the 15th. And then apparently from your testimony around the 13th when you were talking about letting her know originally that you were wanting to terminate her services, as you put in the letter.
No, that was after I talked to her a few days later.
Right, the 13th and a few days later after that.
No, not the 13th. It was like the 15th or 17th.
Okay.
Whenever she called me.
Okay, whenever she
I
called.
never was going to terminate her services at all.
But how does that say in the letter then? It says as we discussed in per our discussion.
It was like a written up letter. I didn't write it. I don't know.
Okay. But you didn't disagree with signing it and sending it, did you?
No, after I talked to Miss Roberts,
Yeah.
and I did send it to terminate the service because I already signed the paperwork from you.
It's what you wanted to do.
Yeah, after all the stuff that happened to me, yeah.
So you talked about
I
your health.
gave up.
All right. So you talked about your health. Said you had high blood pressure.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Are
Yes.
you on some kind of medication?
Yes, sir.
All right. So what are you taking for your blood pressure?
Lisinopril, amlodipine, and Ziac.
Okay. And with those drugs, is your blood pressure fairly regulated?
It has been now lately.
And talked about your elbow.
Yeah, it was like a carpal tunnel tendonitis, and I had like a tear in the ligament.
Good. And when did you say that you hurt that letter? I mean, hurt your elbow.
2019.
Okay. And you went to work after that.
Yeah, I had to go through physical therapy for 4 months, and then I went back to work after that.
Okay. And there were some years that you were in there at $80,000-$90,000 of salary working after that. Is that fair?
Oh yeah. I averaged about 80,000.
All right. So with the amounts of money that you were supposed to pay in the MDA, when's the first time that you were delinquent? Or you missed a payment or shorted a payment? Or you couldn't make the payment?
I think that I was probably about 3 months ago, I'd say.
Okay.
2 to 3 months ago.
But outside of that, you'd been
Well,
able.
well, what happened was I had a check that was like $3,000, and after they take out Tier 1, Tier 2, federal taxes, everything else they take out, my whole check went to her like $1,267 because I was paying $1,500. And after that, I thought I can't go without no money. I don't have gas to go to work. So after that, I changed it to $750.
Yeah, right. And you talked about that being just a couple of 3 months ago is when you started?
Probably 2 or 3 months ago, yeah.
Okay. So from the time or basically the time of separation to 2 or 3 months ago, you were able to maintain that.
Yeah, it's because I was staying in my parents' property rent free because they had their own house with a cabin. They let me stay in that cabin without any kind of expenses. So all I needed was gas to work and food. That's about all I could afford. Plus, in that time, I had 3 loans taken out to try to keep up paying everything, and I also had to
Go ahead.
sell a lot of my stuff.
Since that time of separation, pardon me, since the time of your divorce, I thought you said somewhere in August is what I had written down, is when August of 2024, you would have started seeing someone and you were engaged.
Oh, this year?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. And well, did you get engaged in August? Let me ask you that.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So did you take a trip to Florida with your fiance and the boys?
Yeah, my mom was there. So
When did you do that?
If he can finish, Judge, you interrupted
Never
him
talk.
again.
I'm sorry. Finish
Please let him finish before we begin asking the next question.
Actually, it was Alabama. We went to Alabama. My mom and my dad live there. And my son's birthday was September 23rd. It was his birthday, and he hadn't seen his grandma in a year, or 6 months to a year. And I took him down there for his birthday party.
All right. And it was on the beach at Alabama, right?
Well, they don't live on the beach, but we went to the beach. It's about
Okay.
10 minutes from the beach.
All right. And how long did you stay there?
4 days.
All right. Did y'all rent a hotel room there?
No, I stayed with my mom.
Okay. You just drove back and forth to the beach.
Yeah.
Okay. Your fiance, did you buy her a ring?
No, my mom gave it to her.
So your mother gave her a ring?
Yes.
You spend any money on your fiance at all?
No, she usually has to pay for me.
Okay.
She's a nurse.
Let's talk about homeschooling. You talked about throughout the course, Mr. Dugan asked you about how much that was and whatnot, and that you wanted the kids to go to public school now. That was your wish.
I always have.
Always have.
Yeah.
So when I look through it a minute and pull out a text that says something to the effect that you didn't want the kids to go to public school because they were going to be corrupted, that's not going to be accurate.
Well, I had thoughts about that, about being corrupted, but I went to public school, and I guess over time, maybe years ago, but over time, I've seen that. I mean, they can barely read and they can barely write. I mean, and for a 12-year-old to not be able to write a paragraph, there's something wrong. I think that they need to get a tutor and someone to help them with reading and writing, math.
But your testimony is then you've always wanted them to go to public school.
Yeah, I mean, I worry about corruption. I know there's some bad things, but I think that public school would be better for them.
You may.
So Is this a text message that you recognize between you and your mother?
Yeah, I think so. I guess.
Okay.
Mom.
So that's that 2 paragraphs on the right that are dark. Can you read the first one and the second one, please, sir?
The dark ones.
Yeah, that's your writing. Is it? That's what you're texting your mother.
Okay.
Is that? Well, you tell me. I'm asking.
I don't know. It don't have my name. I guess it is.
Do you remember
But
that
I can
text?
read it.
Okay. You just testified it was. So go ahead and read the block up there.
We're sharing equally, but she has no job really. So with homeschool, I have to pay for it all. They said.
And the next paragraph, please, sir.
I would rather struggle for her work. The boys go to regular school and get corrupted and have babysitters.
You remember when you and your mother were texting this?
I have no idea.
Okay. Exhibit, I believe we're at 10. If I'm correct.
Judge, I'm going to object if we don't know when this was written.
I don't even know.
Well,
We
he's
haven't
already authenticated it
established
as a document that he recognized between he and his mother.
But it can't, it's not pertinent to anything unless, it could have been written
It
when
said
these
mom.
kids were in kindergarten.
You be quiet while we're talking.
It could have been written when the kids were in kindergarten. We don't know.
He
Or
testified.
when the kids were supposed to start school.
He just testified he always wanted the kids to go to public school, and that says just something totally different. So it goes against his credibility, and he's already authenticated that's his text with his mother.
It doesn't go against his credibility because we don't know when it was written. We don't know that he didn't go into any more context about whether or not he still agrees.
Well, I haven't seen the document. Let me take a look at it.
He just said that he always wanted the kids to go. I just asked him that. I asked that twice. He always wanted the kids to go to public school.
That's not what he said.
That's exactly.
It doesn't have a date. It does show that it's between him and his mom, and my understanding was he acknowledged that was a message between him and his mom. I'm going to overrule the objection and allow it to come in solely for the purposes of credibility. Overrule.
Is this number 10, exhibit number 10?
10.
Yep.
You may.
I'll show you this document and ask you if you recognize this document. 2022 tentative national agreement kind of lays out your pay raise for 2022 and beyond. Do you recognize that?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah.
You gave it to us in discovery, I believe. Is that accurate?
Yes.
So, all right. As far as this goes, it lays out percentages of pay raises. 2022 looks like you're getting a 7%, 23 is 4%, the other's 4.5%, correct?
Yeah, they've already, all of them's gone through.
Yeah. And it's got your annual earnings basis on this and what your retroactive pay would be, correct?
Yeah, but it don't, that's just like an average. It's not what everybody makes. Like, it's not so everyone makes that much money. It goes by seniority. Like right now, I'm on an extra board. They've got a freight pool, they got a freight 1, a freight 2, and then they got an extra board. The guys on the F1 and the F2 will make that much money. Someone on the extra board will make considerably less.
Okay. I'm just saying this is something you gave to me, right?
Yeah, that's what on average, that's what it would be. Yeah.
Okay. And I mean, it's fair to say you do get pay raises. You've got good benefits. At your work.
Oh yeah, we get good
You
benefits
have
and yeah.
Good job.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Okay. I'd ask this to be Exhibit 11. He's all right.
You may.
Recognize this. Text message between yourself and Ms. Dunham about your engineer pay. Okay. That's where you recognize it. Do you recognize this? And again, it's recognized as a text message between you and Ms. Dunham. Correct?
Yeah, I recognize it.
All right. And can you read that first paragraph?
It's okay. I'm going to have a lot of big checks coming up. Engineer pay is more than I thought. It's like $150 more per trip. 800 more every 2 weeks.
And when did you have this text message? Thereabouts?
I think that was years ago. Whenever I first got to be an engineer.
Okay.
I don't think it was recently. Maybe like 7 years ago.
Okay.
Judge, I'm going to ask that that be stricken then. Not relevant.
Sustained.
All right. May I approach?
You may.
And you're still an engineer though, correct?
Yeah, it's weird. Like I said, I'm at the bottom of the list on the extra board, and every once in a while they'll send me back to conductor, like I did right before Christmas. I was cut back conductor for 3 weeks, and now I'm back on the engineer extra board. And the pay's a lot less on the extra board. Like when I'm a conductor, I can make more money. So I had a good check about a month and a half, 2 months ago, but then they moved me back to engineer, and it's pretty much just a guarantee because you only work a couple of days a week.
All right. So I'll strike that. As far as the FMLA goes, you've taken FMLA for personal things as well, such as the kids' baseball tournaments and things like that. Father came in. I've got a text about that. It's fair to say you're taking FMLA for some other reasons as well, other than your health reasons. Is that accurate?
I'm going to ask that the court strike part of that statement because Mr. Hawley, and he's done it throughout the entire hearing, testifies for a minute, says, oh, well, I have a text about that. Just ask the question. And if he has a text, present him with the text.
I'll rephrase.
I think
So you're objecting to the form of the question as argumentative?
No, I'm objecting to the form of the question as testimony because he's testifying and saying these things. I think it's his way of influencing the court and the court hearing those things. That, hey, there's a text that exists that says this.
Let me assure you that this court has done this long enough that I do not take a question by a lawyer as evidence. So
yeah,
sustain the objection.
Thank you, Judge.
I'll rephrase. So is it fair to say you are taking FMLA for visits with your family and other things?
Not necessarily. I mean, like if I come back, people understand it. As an engineer, them train rides aren't very, they're bumpy. And I've got FMLA for my arm, I've got it for my back, I've got it for my blood pressure. And a lot of times if a family member's coming in town or if my kids have a game, when I come back from a trip, I'll take off. And then I'll go to the game too. It's not like I'm just taking off just to go to the games.
Mm. Have you ever gone to a game while you're on FMLA?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I have.
Have you gone to visit with family or family come to visit you while you were taking FMLA?
Yeah, family's been visited whenever I had it, when I was off FMLA.
Judge, I don't know what relevance this has to the Rule 60 motion about family coming and visiting while he's on.
It doesn't.
Well,
I would ask that all of that testimony be stricken and that Mr. Hawley be instructed not to continue down this road.
May I respond?
You may.
he's already testified that he's testified on direct examination that he's got issues and he's taken FMLA, and that's the reason why his check is apparently less than what it is. This is just to ask the question, it's not just FMLA for your physical injuries. You're taking it for your personal reasons.
And how does that relate to a Rule 60 motion that Ms. Duke has filed that we are supposed to be hearing?
I would answer that because she put it in direct, the door was open, and I'm responding to that because my understanding, she's offering the evidence to say, Mr. Dunham can't afford this anymore. Mr. Dunham can't keep up with the payments, and that's why this is, not fair to Mr. Dunham and all of these things. And she brought up the FMLA in direct about this is why your pay is less because you've got an issue with your elbow, you've got high blood pressure, and all of those things. So I'm offering it to show, no, it's not just that. He's actually used FMLA to be with his kids, to take family time, to do other things, and that's the reason why his pay is less.
All right, I'm going to allow the testimony that just simply observe that a marital dissolution agreement is a contract between the two parties, and therefore the laws of contract apply. Unconscionability of a contract or an agreement is something that can nullify an agreement if the court finds that unconscionability is applicable or is present. That simply means that if an agreement is so far one-sided in favor of one and against the other as to be unconscionable, then that is a basis under contract law to set aside an agreement. The issue that Ms. Duke has raised is that it is unconscionable, at least arguably, because he is not able to pay the amounts that he is obligated to pay under this marital dissolution agreement and the parenting plan. Therefore, Mr. Holly would be entitled to go into issues to rebut that argument by saying that it's the FMLA, the Family Medical Leave Act, that he is implying or he's using to allegedly reduce his income is what he argues is that he's doing other things with family and taking trips and so forth instead of working. So I'm going to allow it. We'll go till 4 o'clock today, and then we're not coming back tomorrow morning because of the simple fact that we're expecting a large snowstorm to hit us. It's closed when? So we won't be here tomorrow because the courthouse is closed anyway. So anyway, I'm allowing that, but I'm making you both aware of the way that I see this. It is not just a Rule 60 motion arguing that it was fraud or undue inducement. It is also arguing that it's unconscionable in the fact that it's so one-sided. So go for it.
Well,
you don't have to say anything else. Just ask your questions.
I am, Judge. I believe I'm about done. I'm just, if I could have a second to go through my notes, make sure I've covered everything. May I have a vote, my client?
You may. Ms. Duke, you have redirect?
I do. Just a few questions. When Mr. Holly was speaking to you about your 401k and all of that and how you could pay out of your 401k, your 401k is how much?
I've got two. One's about 13,000. The other one's 15,000.
Okay, so a total of 28,000. Would that even cover 6 months of what you're having to pay her?
No.
And when you were making the payments and trying to make the payments work, were you having to borrow from your mom and dad?
Yes.
Okay, and were you having to take out loans?
Yes.
Okay, and are you at an end of like, can you borrow anything else at this point?
No, I've got two loans on one 401k, and the other one you can only have one loan. I've got one loan out on it. And my mom's actually paid my rent where I'm staying for the last 5 months. She couldn't pay it anymore, so now I'm having to pay it, trying to pay it. That's one of the reasons why I quit paying the full $1,500, because I have to have a place to live.
Okay. And this termination of legal services that you wrote to Miss Roberts, you didn't write that. She did. Is that correct?
Yes, she did.
Okay. And at no point in time did you talk to her the next day. You didn't talk to Jennifer Roberts the day after you signed this agreement, did you?
No.
Okay. Did you read this before you signed it?
Yeah, she did some kind of layout thing and sent it to me. Said this would be a good way to terminate their services.
Okay. And
she told me just sign it.
Okay. And did you follow her instructions about just signing it?
Yes.
Okay. Now
You're saying she told you to just sign the letter of termination without?
Yeah,
or
my ex-wife did.
I know, but I'm saying she said to just sign it.
Yeah, it was like a layout. She sent it over the phone and said, here's a layout, a good way to terminate her services, and just sign it. So I did.
and this was on December this was in December when you signed this, is that correct?
Yes.
And you don't harbor any ill feelings with Miss Roberts, do you?
No.
Okay, she was having family issues and you don't fault her for that at the time, do you?
No.
Okay. As a matter of fact, Miss Roberts contacted Mr. Hawley before she filed her petition, didn't she?
Yes.
Okay. Asking if he would accept service.
Would appear to be hearsay to me.
Judge,
So-
may I have exhibit number 8? Now, Mr. Hawley kind of skimmed over this map.
You may.
You said, yes, that is it, $3,000 a month. Was that the amount in total you thought you could pay her, including child support and everything else?
Yes.
It wasn't the $6,796 or whatever it was that's on the income sheet
No.
or on the expense sheet. And Judge, the one that you let come in, between number 10. Hypothetically, let's say that this was sent to your mother during your negotiation. I'm just giving it a
Do what?
I'm not asking you to testify.
Overruled.
What was your understanding about custody? Tell her about that. What did you tell your mother about that?
I told her that I thought we'd have joint custody.
And on that, how did you word it?
We are sharing equally, but she has no job really. So with homeschool, I have to pay for it all, they said.
And so your understanding of what they say,
I'm going to object to you.
You're entitled to question him about what it represents, but that's not a basis for an argument or an objection. But your leading is your objection on leading is sustained. Don't lead the witness.
We are sharing equally, but she has no job really. So with homeschool, I have to pay for it all, they said.
and let's hypothetically say that even if that was only as pertaining to expenses, are you still saying you thought you were sharing everything equally?
Overruled.
What was the question again?
Okay. Let's say hypothetically that it is only applicable to the expenses. Did you think you in that agreement you were still sharing everything equally?
No.
Okay. Did you think that you were going to get help from her though? The 14. Tell me what you thought the agreement would read.
I thought the agreement would be that I'd get joint custody of my kids and be able to see them half and half, and that she was going to get a job and we were going to pay for things equally, half and half, and we were going to split everything half and half. And that's what Miss Roberts, when she wrote out the paperwork the first time, that's what it was.
Okay.
And she never got filed.
And did Miss Dunham know that Miss Roberts had been retained?
I told her after I retained her, yes.
Okay. Did Miss Dunham ever represent to you that she had let Mr. Hawley know that?
Yes.
The FMLA issues came up just a second ago. In order to take FMLA, do you have to have anything from your doctor for it to be approved by the court?
Yes, every year.
Okay. And so if your doctor doesn't approve you, can you take FMLA?
No.
Okay. And when Mr. Hawley was asking you about taking off for ball games and things like that, would you have already been off on FMLA at the time?
Yes.
Is there anything in the FMLA paperwork that prevents you from going to a ball game of your son's?
No, but they do regulate, like, if you take off FMLA and you're at the beach and you're running around doing things you shouldn't be doing, they monitor that and you can get in trouble for that from CSX. So I can't just take off FMLA and go, I don't know, go play volleyball or something like that, but I can go to a game or.
I mean, physically, could you play volleyball anyways?
Probably not.
And tell me what the rigors, the difficulties of your job are with your medical circumstances.
Well, with my arm, when I'm a conductor, I have to sometimes tie 40, 50 handbrakes with your arm, the metal wheels, they call it. You just, use your arm. And that's how I hurt my arm when I had to take off. My arm popped and a ligament popped. So I was off for 4 months because of that. And I have with my back, when you're on a train a lot of times, you're bouncing back, bouncing a lot. So my back's goes out a lot. And then and climbing up and down the engine, on the engines coming off and down the cars. I mean, it's, your back goes out. And I'm old now, so. But yeah, it's a lot. It's strenuous and it's stressful too, like with blood pressure. A lot of times I come home, my blood pressure's 140 over 95.
May I've got a text message up there. It's one of the first ones, I believe. No, strike that. I'm just gonna strike that. Never mind. Did you, from the text messages that your wife sent you early November, did you feel like she was going to try to get you fired over the FMLA or get you in trouble?
Yeah, I thought she was trying to get me in trouble over it. Yeah, because she just kept on saying that, and I'm gonna get someone to call CSX and get you for taking off FMLA, and she used a lot of different things to try to scare me.
That's all, Judge.
Duke, Mr. Dunham, you may step down and have a seat by your lawyer.
All right, thank you.
Duke, you have any other witnesses?
No other witnesses, Judge.
Plaintiff or the movement has rested his proof. Mr. Holly, you wish to offer proof? All right. Mrs. Dunham, if you'll come around, I'm going to ask you to raise your right hand and be placed under oath.
Well, let's start your name, state your name for the court.
Kara Dunham,
And Ms. Dunham, what's your address?
Road, Manlier.
Is that still the marital residence?
Yes.
Yeah. You've had a chance to hear the testimony, and you had a chance to understand what he's testified to about how the paperwork got signed and whatnot. And you heard him say what he accuses you of doing. First off, did he see the paperwork before he signed it?
Yes.
When and how did that happen?
When he came over to Passion Church.
Duke, you're going to have to move up to the microphone,
Sorry.
please, and try to speak directly into it.
That day that we went to Compassion Church, he came over. We were there for homeschool group. The kids were doing school. And he came over. We sat in his car. We went over all the paperwork, read everything out, looked at everything, and that's when he saw it.
So he had it in, he looked at every page?
We had it in between us, and I was reading it to him and going through, and he was sitting next to me and looking at it with me.
So when you're going through that paperwork, did y'all discuss changes?
Yes.
Okay. Tell the court what y'all discussed about the changes and things.
The one thing he wasn't happy about was my spending budget. He thought that as long as he didn't have to pay that he could keep up with the rest of the agreement. And so I agreed to take that off.
Okay, so how much was that?
Well, my spending budget was usually $1,400, but I think in the paperwork we had it in even $1,500. I think it was one or the other.
So you took $1,500 out totally.
Yeah.
And did that leave all the other expenses that we've talked about here today?
Yeah, he said he could keep up with everything else if that wasn't on there.
Yeah. And you agreed to take that off.
Yeah.
And then what'd you do next?
Well, the other thing was that I didn't think that he would agree to the travel ball hotel stays at all. And so I offered to pay half, and he came back and said, no, that's okay, I'll pay for the whole thing. So we left that. And then we talked about the Tuesdays. The Tuesdays was a day that he could most likely get off work every week. As long as he puts it in the schedule, he can get Tuesdays, because people don't usually take Tuesdays off at his work. And so we put that in there because he always said, oh, I can't get off on the weekend. So so we left it at Tuesdays. And then, I'm sorry, what was the rest of the question?
Well, the question was about, what did you do next as far as the paperwork after you got done with the changes?
So when we
have you discussed all the changes? Let's make sure we got
after we
that.
discussed the changes, he took the boys. I think they went to Walmart, and I went over to your office, and your secretary took that amount off of the paperwork, had me re-sign, notarize. And then I texted Michael and I said, hey, I'm leaving and I'll meet you at UPS. And then we met there and I brought the whole packet in and he said, okay. And he signed the whole thing.
Did he see the changes and look through that paperwork?
He didn't look through it, but I had it there.
Did he have all of them in his hand at one point to hand to her?
I don't know if he picked it up. It was in front of him. So I don't know that he put it in his hand, but it was right there. It was all together.
Or did you set it in front of him?
Yeah.
Okay. So when you were at the UPS store, were you all at one of those desks?
It was just the counter, at the counter.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how long did that episode at the UPS store for the notarization for Mr. Dunham, how long did that take?
It didn't take very long.
Okay.
I think we went out to eat together afterwards. So
Okay.
it was probably 5 or 10 minutes.
So what's your testimony about him having the paperwork at the UPS store? So I'm still a little unclear about that. Tell me what you did as far as him having the paperwork on his own, right there in front of him, that he could have looked at.
It was in front of him, and they had to open it up for him to sign it. And so he could have gone through it and seen if there was any other changes, but that was the only change. I had already notarized signed from your office, the original, and the only change was that $1,500 that I did. So.
And that was at his request.
Yeah.
And then after that, what happened? What'd you do next?
I think we went out to eat. Went for Mexican, and then I don't remember.
His testimony about you influencing him or forcing him to sign it, twisting his arm, however you want to call it, I think his testimony was, he's not going to see the kids unless he signs it, or a bunch, some things like that. Explain your position to the court about that. Did you unduly influence him at all?
Yeah, I wasn't keeping him, I didn't threaten that he had to sign that paperwork at all. We talked about all of the different details in there, and I was actually surprised that he didn't, argue about the travel hotels and a couple other things. But he said, no, I want to make sure the kids are taken care of, and that you don't have to move. And so he said, okay.
So were you involved at all in any discussions with him about Ms. Roberts?
He said that he had an attorney that he had talked to, but before we signed, he said that he had fired her.
Why? Did he ever tell you why?
Well, he said that he was just going to go ahead and do the agreement with me, and so he fired her. He wasn't going to do that anymore.
Heard his testimony about him asking for money back from Ms. Roberts. Is that accurate? Were you aware that that was accurate? Were you involved with any of that discussions with him?
Yeah, because we talked about it, and he was upset that she wasn't listening to him, that she filed this paperwork after he told her not to, and he just felt that she wasn't listening, so she should give the money back.
You heard him say that he didn't have any issues with Ms. Roberts.
He called her a snake. He said she was mean. He, from what he was telling me, he was not happy with her.
Judge, I want to play just a brief recording between her and Mr. Dunham about that exact question.
Right.
Do you want me to plug in for all of this, or can I just play it with her right here?
Well, you can play it, put the microphone down where the speaker is on yours, and we'll see if we can hear it.
So I'm gonna play a recording and ask you after you hear this if you recognize this recording.
Fix this mattress. I put it back so we can walk through. We're just gonna get the ball and go in the morning.
Well, as she had a right to ask discovery, I would have provided it. If she wants to hear it, we'll go ahead. I didn't get any discovery to provide this for her. If she wants to hear it, I'll be glad to take a break and play it for her. This is a conversation between Mr. Dunham and Mrs. Dunham when he said he had no problem with Ms. Roberts at all. This is showing that he had a pretty serious problem with Ms. Roberts. The date's not necessarily a paramount to a foundation. She testified that, well, I take that back. I was going to ask her some of these questions after she heard it, but if you want me to lay a foundation about her giving me this tape and what it is, I'll be glad to do that.
What I want or don't want. It's a question of what's the proper procedure. Number one, the proper procedure would be to identify what it is that we're about to listen to and what the circumstances were and the time frame and so forth, so that Ms. Duke will be aware of how to, and this court will be aware of how this factors in and what we've been discussing. The other problem you're going to have is that I realize my hearing is not the best in the world, but it is not going to be very understandable for me to, unless you can plug in through the system and try to, which you certainly are able to do, but if you want to plug it in and play it over the speakers in the courtroom, that would be fine.
That's why that David, he's trying to say, oh, all of us are. How about we found out? That's why the David.
That's what he testified to, is he never had a problem with Miss Roberts. It was one of those situations that he never had a problem. Is what I heard. His testimony was on direct examination. So,
well, I'm going to allow him. Well, both of you are testifying now for your clients, and it might go quicker if you could just testify for your client. I realize, but the rules require them to testify. So, Ms. Duke, I'm going to allow him to play it. It would be a situation where he's going to need to establish the time frame of when this is before it's played, or let her listen to it and then have her identify when it took place. And then you can certainly cross-examine her regarding that. You can recall your client today or some other day when we're finishing this up. So, Mr. Holly, you want to try to hook that up to the system?
what I am realizing is I have my laptop with me that doesn't have one of these connections. Well, wait a minute.
Either one of you guys know how to? My technical wizards are going to see what they can do to help you out.
Judge, if somebody's on their way or somebody's, I'll be glad to move on so we can keep going. We can play this later.
Right.
You
If you want to move on, we'll come back to it.
Did you ever stop him from seeing the children or hold that over his head to sign this paperwork?
No.
Can you explain to the court, what his pre-signing visitation kindly was and what it was after his visitation was after that? I mean, how was he getting to see the kids? How often, the duration?
We were kind of just working it out. He would, say, I'm going to be off, and then he would get the kids.
He testified that you threatened him in, I guess, a couple of ways. Did you ever threaten him about this paperwork?
No, I never forced him to sign this. I never told him he had to sign it at all.
Mr. Holly, Officer Howell is here to save the day. You want to have your recording ready?
It's ready. Plugged in and ready. I'll hit play. That may help the signal out. I may have started. Do you remember when this conversation was between you and Mr. Dunham regarding this ordeal with Ms. Roberts?
It was I believe the next week,
Thank you.
or within, days of us signing everything. It was right directly after everything had been signed, and
You show you how to do that? Sorry. You're ready to go.
So it was within a week after you signed the agreement?
yeah,
Or-
I think he refers in there to dates. Well, I don't remember exact.
You recorded this, correct?
Yeah, I think he mentions a Tuesday, which would be that he talked to her, which is the day after we signed the paperwork.
Okay.
He mentions it in there.
So he would have already, or would he have already been through the issues about Ms. Roberts and not being able to get a hold of her and all of that stuff?
Yeah, this was after we signed everything, and he had been having those
Okay.
issues with her.
And again, I'm going to play this, and I want you to listen, intently to be able to answer the question: is this a conversation between you and Mr. Dunham?
I don't know if your dad's making money on those for you, sweetie. Let's just fix this mattress and put it back so you can walk through. We're just gonna get the ball and go tomorrow in the morning. I mean, we could just.
You turn the volume up any on your computer.
We could probably just drop it off tomorrow, and then leave straight from there.
Drop what on all the repairs?
Yeah, in this mattress. Unless you're taking it, because I need it out of here. I don't think so either. And it's got stains, because that's the thing.
Yeah.
I don't want to. And it's lumpy. All right. Thank you. Okay. Hello.
Well.
Guys, no fight down. I don't know what that means. I mean, I need to be able to take care of things. Michael, go.
All of a sudden.
That was my phone call. Well, I mean, I have that coin I was going to give you, but I didn't think you wanted to dip into that.
I don't know if I can do it because my check was, like you said, it wasn't very much. I was kind of down and out. That lawyer, old girl, and I didn't expect to talk to you.
Oh, shoot. Get through the door. Oh, shoot. They got the door open. Did he even go in there?
He's back out. Did she go back in?
No, she just went under these things.
Oh, no.
Buttercup. Okay, just go out and I'll shut the thing. I mean, so she's canceled. I don't have to.
See, that's another thing. I don't know. She's crazy. She told me I was crazy as hell. I mean, she's been awful, man. And you violated the client something agreement. And, yeah, I gotta see that paperwork. I'm calling that lawyer and all that stuff. But she, I'll call you back. It's been a week at her.
I thought you told her that you told me that you canceled her.
That's what I did, but that's what she said. I don't know what happened. She didn't ever call me back. It's been a week. That was last Tuesday.
Okay.
So I don't know what's going on.
Here's the other one.
Around.
Molly, you better get out of here.
So let me just What I'll have to do is because I wasn't able to switch the deposit yet. Because it was just the other day. So I'll have to switch it the next time. But so I'll have to just take cash down there Friday. Monday,
Okay.
But there's still
Are
like
they?
there's $100 good in there for automatic. So but I'll try to get $600 together for it. What do you want that?
Well, I was just gonna say we still need to go to that bank and get it fixed. I think we can.
But y'all do life to be honest with direct deposit?
No,
No.
no, but
Well, I can do that. I can be on time.
okay. But if you're gonna deposit cash, you probably need to be on this. You probably just need to deposit the cash. I don't know. I would just deposit the cash and then take yourself off after you deposit. Mm-hmm.
All right. We'll just see how it goes. Let me know to find that ball.
Okay, can you just watch and make sure the cats don't come out when I turn
well,
this thing
yeah.
on?
Okay.
I think the other one went in the house now.
I mean, that's it. If I can stop it, it's fine. Um,
I could not hear it very well either. So he introduced it, but as a trier of fact, I can assure you that it doesn't carry much weight with me because I could not understand it very well.
it's all digital, so I mean, I can only do what I can do with it and turn it up on this, and I can play it on this. We might be able to work on that. Let me ask you this question. In that conversation, I mean, when he said you heard him testify he didn't have a problem with Ms. Roberts. Was that contradictory to y'all's conversation?
Say it again.
You heard him testify in direct examination that he didn't have a problem with Ms. Roberts.
Yeah, that's not true. He did.
So what was he referring to, Ms. Roberts, in this conversation?
That sorry, I don't remember what he was upset that that she just wasn't,
Was he calling her names?
yeah, I'm trying to remember what he said in that conversation. Because I know what he said other ones. Sorry, I was listening to that one, but I believe he said that she was mean, and that she yelled at him.
You heard him testify about he had problems with his elbow, and he's got problems with high blood pressure and things of that nature. Is that accurate?
Yeah, in 2020, I believe it is. That's where his pay is real low. That's when he had hurt his arm. That's when he first got the FMLA for his arm. And then he was trying to find a way to continue his FMLA after his arm was feeling better. So he started adding the other things on there to the doctor. But that was always an argument that we had about the FMLA, about him taking it for non-medical reasons.
And what was the basis of that argument? And what was the reasoning for that?
Well, because he would just take days off whenever he wanted to. And then I would say, hey, you need to go to work. And he'd say, well, I've made enough money this week. And then we would go to the end of the week to pay bills. And I'd say, hey, I need for this doctor's appointment or whatever it was. And then he'd say, well, I don't have that money and you're just trying to get money out of me. I said, well, that's why you need to go to work. You can't just say, the house payment's done and then not go to work.
How long have you homeschooled your children?
For Michael and Ethan, the two boys that I have with Michael, they've always been homeschooled.
Was that agreement between the two of you?
Yes.
Was that something that the two of you always wanted to happen?
Yes.
You saw that text that we introduced in evidence you had about him saying didn't want the boys to be corrupted in public school and whatnot. Is that, or
Yes.
was that like a common conversation for the two of you to have and position?
Yes, it was.
And how long did he pay for, or how long a period of time while you were married did he pay for the homeschool?
So really, the way that it was set up before the agreement, the homeschool group that I worked with, I would get enough. Well, kind of. After my write-offs, I really didn't make any money, but I would use what was coming in on that, and I would pay the homeschool tuition. But then when we made this agreement, he said he would go ahead and pay the tuition, but he wouldn't give me my budget money. But some of that, if I had any of that, then that would help me to make up, buying food and gas and all that.
Of the letter to Ms. Roberts, that termination letter, tell the court about how that got drafted and signed and whatnot.
So he wanted to try to get a refund from her. Plus, she had filed that paperwork that that had a court date on it. We didn't know what to do to get that off because he was telling me she wasn't listening. She wasn't taking it off the docket. He didn't know what to do. I said, I don't know either. I said, maybe if you, write her a letter because he was telling me that he had already fired her. I said, maybe you have to give her, a formal letter for her to get that off the docket. He said, okay. So I pulled up a template and I texted him. I said, hey, I've got a template. If you want to come over and write out what you want to write out to her, then, we can do that. And so he came over to the house and it got written out. We just worked together, and then he signed it and got sent to her. But then, it didn't come off the docket until that very morning of the court date.
Did he read that letter before he signed it?
Yes.
With you sitting there beside him, did he understand all of that?
Yes.
I mean,
I
Lead
believed.
the witness, please.
Yes.
I believed that he understood all of it because he told me his words, what he wanted to say and what happened.
Can Mr. Dunham read and write?
Yes, he's an engineer.
Well, I'm just asking.
He has a two-year degree in college.
What college?
I think he went to one in Ohio.
So how often do you get paid from your homeschooling?
It's a commission, so it's just.
Let me rephrase that. Did you get paid every year throughout the marriage, pretty much?
From the time the kids started homeschooling, the year after that.
So
So he paid the first year.
Tell the court about when you guys formulated the MDA and the spousal support was what, $1,400 a month, $1,500 a month? I'll rephrase. How much was the spousal support for the month?
Well, what we did is we talked about him giving me $1,500 every 2 weeks. And so then we took what was on the calculator for the child support and added to that to make it $1,500 every 2 weeks. So the spousal support came out to, I think, $825 every 2 weeks, so that he would be paying $1,500 for both.
How did y'all negotiate the $1,500? What was the reasoning for that?
Well,
every 2 weeks.
He was saying that he would pay for everything except for my budget. And I said, he was concerned about how much it was going to cost, trying to tell me, well, I don't, make but, $4,000 or $5,000 a month. And I said, well, that's not true. And I said, well, if we take that off and we just make this number $1,500 every 2 weeks. Would you agree to that? And he said yes.
So what was the 1,500 in spousal support every 2 weeks going for?
So it was spousal and child support together.
Okay.
And the spousal was, to pay for all the house expenses, the mortgage, the utilities, any other expenses that I had, the trash, the exterminators, all that.
How much is a monthly mortgage?
It was $2,400 then with the escrow, but I think it's $2,300 now.
At $2,300 a month, would the spousal support alone cover that?
No.
Where was the additional money coming from?
Child support and what money I can bring in.
And was it your responsibility to pay the mortgage payment?
Yes.
Okay. And your responsibility for the utilities and taxes as well?
Yes.
And that money was to come from where?
From the money he gave me.
Okay.
Yeah.
And was this something that the two of you negotiated in the drafting of your MDA and parenting plan?
Yes.
Is that the reason why you came about that figure?
Yes.
So, had you stayed current on your mortgage to a point?
Yes, I was current for quite a while.
Yeah. And the boys live there with you?
Yes.
Are they homeschooled there with you?
Yes.
Okay. So it's their home and it's kind of their school as well. I'll rephrase. So as far as the payments on the mortgage, did you get behind?
Yes, I did.
When did you start getting behind?
I think it was September.
And why was that?
He kept lowering how much he was paying every time. It would just first he lowered it from $1,500 to $1,375, and he said, "Well, my lawyer told me that's all I have to pay." So then he paid that for a little bit, and then he lowered it to $1,000, and then he lowered it to $750, and now he's got it at $500.
With the obligations of homeschooling, et cetera, can you make the mortgage payments and all of that without the negotiated amount of money that's coming in your MDA and parenting plan?
I'm sorry.
I don't think that's
that one was leading. He's asking, or he's prefacing the question, or including in the question extraneous information, but it is not leading or suggestive of the answer. At least I'm going to overrule it.
No, I cannot make the payments without the support that he sends.
So if that doesn't happen today, as far as that continuing, that gets modified today, what's the outcome of your position at home with the boys?
The house will go into foreclosure, or it'll, if it can be sold really fast.
So you talked about, or he did, I think he said like $170,000 in equity. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
That's what he testified to. Is that accurate?
No, it's
not.
not.
Why is that not accurate?
The house, we hadn't even been in the house a few months when we broke up. And when we discussed, well, it's not accurate because the houses in the area are going for the high 300,000s. So there's no way that I could get, what he's saying for that house. And they're comparable houses with the same builder, same amount of land, everything. The other thing is when we discussed the house, we, had figured out that the 401ks in the house, by the time we sold it, did all that, they would be about even. So he was going to take the 401k, I was going to take the house, and then that way I wouldn't have to move. But at first he was upset about it because he said, well, the equity in the house is going to go up quicker than the 401k. And I said, well, I don't think that's going to happen, but we can talk about it some more if you think so. He said, well, I don't want you guys to have to move, so we'll just do it that way.
How much is owed on your home?
I think now it's 311. It's gone down.
How much equity would you testify to would be in the home?
It really depends on what I could get for the house. I know the houses in the area are going for maybe 375. somewhere around there. I don't know if I could get a little bit more, but I'm not sure. They're pretty comparable.
You have to pay realtor and closing costs as well, correct?
Yeah.
And let's go back to the MDA, and you're familiar with the provisions about the 401k, correct?
Yeah.
And you heard the judges looking at it from his interpretation that, you know, he would still have to pay spousal support and the 401k. Is that accurate?
No, in there it says payments because first of all, he threatened to quit his job and go to Florida and run off. And I was worried about that. And that's why that provision was in there. Because I thought, I mean, he's run off from everybody else. I thought he was just going to take off and leave me and the kids, you know, with nothing and not be able to pay the house. So, so that's supposed to be that if he gets behind, then I can get half the 401k, and that makes up the payments that he's supposed to have already made. And then it pays for future payments. But, you know, say there's only 10,000 there, then just as a odd number, and, you know, his spousal support is over that over time, then he would have to start making payments again, if that makes sense.
Was it ever your intention to have him pay spousal support and give you the 401k money?
No, that's why he kept the 401k.
And if you got the 401k money today, how much do you think it would be based on you living with him and knowing what's in his 401ks?
You know, I don't know because he's got more than one, and I lost access to the older ones like a long time ago, so I wasn't sure. And he's also taken those loans on the 401ks recently. I think he had one loan that was almost paid off when we got divorced, but now he's taken other loans on it. So I don't know the numbers. I just know that we figured out the house and the 401k were about even at the time.
Did he get excuse me, you heard his testimony about him having to call the police about the baseball cards. Can you describe that to the court? What happened?
Well, so what happened is he had gone across the road and he was staying at his mom's cabin. And he had, I don't know if he had all his baseball cards. He has over 20,000 regular cards. But then he has like signed, autographed Michael Jordan's, all that stuff. So he had it over there. I had the code to that. We were going back and forth, and I saw in our shared email that he had started to sell those off, and I was worried that we didn't have an agreement yet, and that he was just going to say, "Oh well, I don't have anything. They're not worth anything. I don't know what you're talking about." So I went over there so that I could, you know, take pictures of them. But I was kind of worried that he would get upset with me being there. So I went ahead and brought him back to the house. But before I could put him back, he sent me a text and he was all mad and he called the sheriff. So the sheriff came over. I said, "Look, it's marital property. I just want to log what it is." And they said, "Okay, well, do you mind, you know, so we don't have an issue, do you mind just logging it? And then we'll take it back to him." I said, "Yeah, that's fine." So I took pictures of everything and then I sent it back.
What's the in your testimony? Are these baseball cards marital property?
Yes, he bought all those while we were married. The ones he had before then were just like the dollar, you know, or maybe five. You know, they weren't all the expensive, worth thousands and thousands of dollars. He didn't have that before we got married.
Did you call him names? You said you called him names. Did you call him names?
I told him a lot that he was, you know, a liar. So if that's what he means.
Any other words? Any other names?
Um, you know, manipulator. I don't I don't really remember anything else.
Did he call you names?
Um, I'm not quite sure. He wasn't too nice to me. He would cuss at me a lot the last year. Um, you know, threw trash in my face, things like that. But I don't remember him. I'm not quite sure if he really.
Can your kids read and write?
Yes.
Why is he saying they can't read and write?
I think Mikey has dyslexia, so it took him a very long time, our 11-year-old, it took him a very long time to learn to read. But he's been doing really good now. I mean, it just took him, but that was before we even divorced. So I think it's just an excuse that he's using because he's the one that wants to keep them out of school so he can take them any day, he wants to be off. I'm the one that has argued with him. I need to be able to do school with them. So,
How often do you homeschool them during the week?
well, right now he takes them on Tuesdays and takes them, he takes them on Monday nights and they get back on Tuesday nights. So they don't do school on Tuesdays because he doesn't bring them for school. So they do Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday.
What's been his participation in homeschooling?
When we were together, he would help them with the math. So he liked to do that with them. And then I would do the other stuff with them.
What is it now?
I'm doing everything.
Do you give any reason why he doesn't do anything anymore with them?
We haven't had the communication. So, I mean, he could do something with them, but I haven't heard from them that he's done anything with them. But
To be clear, have you held the kids hostage for money?
no.
When that was being implied during the signing of the agreement, what was his visitation then?
Like I said, he would just say that he was off work, and then so I would just work with him. If I had something going on with the family, a special day, I'd say, hey, well, it's so and so's birthday. We would just work it out. We just worked it out.
About how many days a week was that?
I don't know. I didn't keep track. But I think with the agreement, I was really concerned about the FMLA. I didn't at the time want to put weekends, like every other weekend or something on there, because then I felt like it would force him to do something illegal. And so that's why we put the Tuesdays. But I didn't really keep track right then.
What's his current visitation been?
He's been getting them on Tuesdays.
Has he asked for any additional days?
He did message one day and say that he couldn't work and he wanted to get them a different day. But I had been advised by you to go by the plan, and so I just have been going by the plan.
While you were married, were you behind on any of the bills or any of the marital obligations?
No, we would always argue about money a lot, though, because he would go behind my back and get a loan, and he gambled and did a lot of other things. So we weren't behind, but we were always arguing about the money. Actually, you know what? I just thought we did get behind with our old house when he hurt his arm. So we were behind then.
Did you kind of work your way out of that?
Yeah, he got a COVID thing so that the loan, it could be put on the end of the loan for the house.
You heard him testify, about his current, reduction in pay because of this. On average, what was he making while y'all were married?
Well, it's like I said, if he worked, he'd make a lot of money, but
Well, I say a lot. How much?
well, 2023 he was at 100,000, and he had gotten a 4.5% raise that July, so it wasn't, it was only part of the year. Plus, he got a 4.5% raise this year from that, and that's with him taking 12 weeks of FMLA every year just to go to baseball games and do whatever he wanted.
You heard him testify that how he used the FMLA. Was that accurate?
Oh, it's accurate that he just uses it whenever he wants to. It's not about his health, all the time.
What did you see him use what reasons did you see him take FMLA for, if they weren't health reasons?
Days that he wanted off. And that's why he told me that he wanted to keep it, because that's the only way that all the guys in the railroad can get days off. Otherwise, they work you too much.
Well, my question: what reasons while you were married to him,
Yeah.
you said he took 12 weeks? Was that all health related?
No.
Okay, what other reasons were there that he took FMLA?
It would be, one of the boys' birthdays. We would have family in town. He would take FMLA if we were going on vacation. He'd take FMLA for baseball tournaments. He actually got a letter from his company. He was in trouble because they saw that he was taking off like every weekend in a pattern. And so he had to kind of slow down on taking baseball weekends. He also would get a letter if he took any holidays off. And so he will not take holidays with FMLA because he knows he'll get in trouble.
Do you feel like this agreement is fair?
Yeah, I think so. He got thousands of dollars in baseball cards, and he got the 401k, and I got the house, and the other things are about the same as the cards, So I felt it was fair when we did it.
If that gets changed, or at least the monetary amount gets changed any way whatsoever, can you survive? How will you survive? Put it that way.
We'll have to, I don't even know, because we'll have to go stay with my parents, but they don't really have, well, we can't stay there very long, maybe, a couple weeks or something. And I really don't know what, if we had to redo everything.
How did you find out about his fiance?
Well, first I saw her car starting in July. So I knew he had.
Spain.
Yes, sir. So do you know of any additional monies that he's spending for the fiance?
I'm not sure. She lives with him.
That's all I have.
Right, we're going to take our afternoon recess for 15 minutes.
All rise. Rise. Court's now back in session. You may be seated.
Judge, I'm trying to be quick so we can get out of here, but Ms. Dunham, I'm Hillary Duke.
So you agree to breaking and entering into his home and getting his baseball cards out, is that correct?
No,
Okay. Well, you went into his home uninvited, is that correct?
I had access to the place.
Okay, but you didn't have permission to
I
be
had
there. Yes or
the
no?
code.
Did you have permission to be there?
I didn't talk to him that day before I
Okay.
went in.
So the answer to that question is no, I didn't have permission. Is that correct?
We were married.
Did he give you express permission to be in his home, yes or no?
I did not talk to him before
Yes.
I went in.
Yes or no, and then you can explain yourself.
Can you ask it again?
Did he give you permission to be in his home on that date?
He gave me permission
Yes
to
or
go.
no?
Yes,
Okay. And on that date, you also took out of his home gold and silver. You had the majority of the gold at the house already, correct?
I did not. Can you ask one question? What was the first question?
You had the majority of the gold at your house already, is that correct?
I had all the gold.
Okay. And on that date, you took, aside from the baseball cards, you also took silver out of his home. Is that correct?
No,
Okay. And you took ammo and his court documents out that day, correct?
no,
You took the copies of the court documents on that date that Miss Roberts had drafted.
no.
And you knew what Miss Roberts was wanting him to submit to the court on November the 7th.
No.
Got to be in the form of a question, Miss Duke.
Okay. You knew, yes or no, the parenting plan that he wanted approved by the court was an equal shared parenting time. Yes or no?
Are you asking me if I don't know quite how you're asking this, because I did not know from any lawyer or any parenting plan.
On November the 7th, when you took documents from his home.
Oh, no, I did not.
Okay.
I did not know that. No.
You reviewed the copy of the documents that he received from Miss Roberts, correct?
No.
Correct. It is a question.
She makes a statement, then she asks her a question at the end. So overruled.
And you testified earlier that you never knew about him hiring Miss Roberts until he signed off on the agreement with Mr. Hawley. Is that correct?
No.
When did you know about Miss Roberts?
No. He had told me that he had a lawyer, but he said that he fired her. That's all I knew.
And I'm going to go on, Judge, I think. At no point in time has he earned $120,000 in the last 10 years, has he?
In the last 10 years, no.
Okay. And you agree with me that your parenting plan shows that he was making $120,000 a year on the child support calculation. Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay. And that's not accurate, is it?
It was accurate when he signed it.
Have you researched the value of your home on Zillow or through a real estate agent?
I looked at there's two houses that just sold down the road from the same builder.
Okay. I asked you a specific question.
Okay.
Have you looked at Zillow or spoken
did
to
not
a real
look at-
estate agent?
I did speak to a realtor. I did not look at Zillow.
Okay. Did you know that Zillow values your home at $493,000?
It's inaccurate.
Okay. And you've told this court today that this is a fair agreement because he got some things and you got some things, but you understand that you got a home, $7,000 a month from him, the trailer, the golf cart, the storage building, the gold. Can you explain to me how that's fair?
I Say, okay, what was the beginning of your question? You're saying that I got,
You got the home.
okay.
You're getting
So-
$7,000 a month.
Okay, I did not
You've
get
got a
7,000 a month.
trailer, a golf cart, a storage building. Tell me how.
I don't get 7,000 a month. That's completely inaccurate. He's supposed to pay 1,500 every 2 weeks, and that's with child support. I don't get anything else. That was part of that. The trailer was a birthday present that I had gotten. He had never used that trailer. He doesn't know how to drive a trailer. That was mine. The storage building was part of the property, and you know, the setup was so that I could do homeschool in there. He got thousands and thousands of baseball cards. He got all the guns. He left 2 rusty rifles and 1 handgun. So I basically got 1 handgun. He took all the valuable guns.
Okay, those guns were attained before marriage. Is that correct?
No, they were not. He did not have those.
And the
before.
baseball cards and collections were before marriage. Is that correct?
No, only the cheap baseball cards that we weren't even talking about. These ones that are worth, 20, 30,000, whatever they are, those were all after we got married.
Okay. And you don't have any of that to show to the court today where you stole that book of cards and took your pictures? You don't have anything before this court today, do you?
I did not steal anything.
Okay. You took it. Is that fair? You've already testified you took it. Yes or no?
I had
Yes
the
or no?
cards, and they went back to him.
Okay. But you removed them from his home without his permission. It's not been answered. It hasn't been answered.
Overruled.
You removed it without his permission.
I had
I
the
did
marital
is the answer to that.
property. Yes, I got the marital
Okay.
property, took pictures, and then they went back to him.
And you had multiple discussions with him about, I'm wanting you to have joint custody, but we're just going to put Tuesday and then work with your schedule to give you more time.
No,
Okay.
he only gets 1 day off a week. So that was not a discussion.
Okay, but when he takes his FMLA, he might have more. Is that correct?
If he takes days off FMLA,
Okay. And he's used his FMLA for 3 years in the marriage. 3 years. And now all of a sudden that you guys are getting divorced, you have some issue with how he uses his FMLA?
no, we argued about it all the time.
Oh, okay. You just don't like that you can't control when he's at work and not at work. Is that correct?
Overruled.
You
You can't control when he's at work and when he's not at work.
I told him, I don't care if you go to work or not. I just want you to make sure that you're providing for kids
Okay.
the way that you've agreed. That's it.
And so on that list of items that I gave regarding the expenses, after he's paid you $6,776 a month, do you expect him to live off of $100 a month?
He doesn't pay that. That's not what he pays.
My understanding is that, and I just want to make this clear because I know Mr. Duke, you continue to talk about that particular amount. My reading of the marital dissolution agreement is that he's going to pay her these monies, and out of that money, the spousal support, she is required to pay the mortgage for the house and the utilities. That's the way I read it. Is that not how you read it?
No, it says he's supposed to pay the utilities and the mortgage.
Well, let's look, just because I want to, this is a continuing issue that comes up. And all right, spousal support. The parties agree and acknowledge the husband shall pay to the wife the sum of $1,500 biweekly, and the payments shall begin on the first day of December 2023 for 3 months, and then shall pay $825 bi-weekly thereafter, and continue until the youngest child reaches the age of 18 and or graduates from high school, whichever is later, to which shall cover the cost of the mortgage, utilities, and taxes on the marital residence.
Yes,
Because-
but if you go down to the next page on 4, it says the husband shall be responsible for the mortgage payment, utilities, and taxes of the marital residence.
Where are you looking at that?
Page 4, sentence 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Husband shall be responsible for the mortgage payment, utilities, and taxes on the marital residence until such time as the wife can refinance the marital residence in her name only.
And the wife gets 10 years to refinance.
To page 6 of that is very plain. That's what he's talking about on page, what the parties are talking about on page 4, with being required to pay the mortgage bill taxes. That's a spousal support mortgage.
Well, I
I don't
understand
think-
that's the argument, but that's not clear.
I don't think
Then-
anything in this agreement.
I'm sorry? I
Well,
don't care what the course of I'm being required to interpret a marital dissolution agreement to determine whether it is one that is enforceable, and under the circumstances, all I'm pointing out is there's some confusion on whether or not, on how much it is that he is required to pay. Now, the language is contradictory in those two paragraphs in this marital dissolution agreement, is what I'm pointing out. In one, it says he's obligated to pay that. And then, as Ms. Duke points out, the next page or 2 pages later, it says that he has to pay the spousal support, and out of that, she'll pay the mortgage and so forth. So it's, those two are inconsistent in my opinion. But any redirect? Nothing. We have just a moment. I do have a question or two. In this message that was sent on November the 11th, 2 days before the signing of this agreement, it was made as exhibit number 6. You make the statement to him as following: I have piles and piles of evidence of your lies, and all that evidence can be backed up even more with subpoenas for your FMLA marked off days, personal vacation, and everything. Then your work may open more investigations about your misuse of FMLA. There's a possibility of the judge referring your illegal jersey sales to investigators. Selling those to that store along with everyone else is highly illegal. I even showed you that guy that was arrested back when I was begging you to stop. You agreed to stop and never did. Please think about just working things out and stopping your illegal behavior along with the other stuff you're doing. Then it goes on to talk about the boys need a godly dad. Do you know what the term extortion is? All right, the term extortion means that when you're threatening someone with prosecution or criminal prosecution in order to gain an advantage in a civil action, that can be construed to be extortion. In other words, threatening someone to prosecute them or to reveal criminal conduct on their part in order to gain an advantage in a civil action is where this sounds a great deal like. So, and that was 2 days before he signed this agreement, correct?
Yes, can I comment on
Yes.
that? So when we were talking in that conversation, he kept trying to tell me that he only made $4,000 or $5,000 a month, and I said, "You're lying about that. I know how much you make." So when I was talking about the FMLA and all that kind of stuff, I was referring to that. Look, it's all going to come out how much you make, and we're going to know like that you are not going to work on purpose illegally. And so then my thinking was that any judge looking at it would know that he's lying about his income because he was trying to not, pay. and not have to, support me and the kids because of the income thing. So that's what that was. And then I thought, okay, if we do have to go to court because of all that, then all this other stuff's going to come out, and I don't want him to lose his job. I don't want him to get in trouble.
But
So
all
I
of that
just
has
wanted
now
to do
come
an
out
agreement.
today, right?
Yeah,
All of
it's
that's
come out
now come
now.
out. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Now, you drafted the template for the letter to terminate Ms. Roberts as his attorney, and I have reviewed that. Did you sign his name to that?
No, I did not.
So you're saying that's his signature?
Came to the house, and I even texted him. I said, I have a template. If you want to come over, you can look at it and, tell me what you want it to say, or we'll just work it out. And so he came over to the house. He said, what he wanted it to say. I fixed, made it sound professional for him. I said, is this it? He said, yes. He signed it, and that was it. So I just helped him with it.
Right. Well, the reason I was wondering is after looking at his signature on that document and his signature on the marital dissolution agreement and his signature on the parenting plan, those signatures appeared to be different, and that's why I wanted to have you testify under oath as to who actually signed that document. So, all right. I think those are all my questions. Anybody have anything following up?
So, Judge talks about the paragraph in that text that, you were being a little forceful with him about laying out the reasoning and some of those things about the expenses and some of this stuff coming to light. So that was a couple of days before you guys signed on the 13th. And then on the 13th, when you guys signed this, when you negotiated the actual settlement, did you actually come way down on what you were asking for at that point? What
Sustained, don't lead the witness.
What concessions did you make at that time on the 13th?
Oh, we took the $1,500 a month off.
Okay, and that was at his request?
Yes.
Okay. So did you hold all that stuff over his head when that was going on?
No, we didn't even discuss anything but the agreement.
Okay. As far as that letter goes, did he ask for your help?
Yes, he asked for my help.
And again, he came over to your.
He came to my house.
Sustained, don't lead the witness.
Where did he go to?
He came over to the house, and we sat at the dining table.
Okay. And again, that was at whose request?
At his request.
Mr. Stooke, do you have any other questions? Thank you, ma'am. You may step down. Mr. Holly, you have any other proof?
I do not.
Any rebuttal proof? I will hear you in argument. Excuse me.
Action. Both parties had an opportunity to negotiate. We've heard that all day today. They negotiated. And just like any agreement, you go through points of negotiation with this and that. And it was negotiated. Both parties signed it. He had many, many chances to do other things. He did not. Fired his lawyer, see the termination letter, and he signed it. And again, this is, in my opinion, I think the evidence is clear, buyer's remorse. It's not $6,000, $7,000, it's $3,000. And you've heard that goes to the mortgage, utility expenses. If you want to, and you have the option of 60.02 to rearrange your order as well. So if that's something that needs to be rearranged, by all means, rearrange it. It's been the party's conduct this entire time. She wasn't taking this mortgage and getting hair and nails and eyelashes and all the things that we see people do. I don't know what she was doing. She's paying the mortgage, testified she was behind when he got behind. And these two boys are depending on that for their homeschool and their actual residence at this point. She was the economically disadvantaged spouse throughout the process of the entire marriage. And that was what they had set up. That was how they did it. That was what they all agreed to, was the homeschool and that kind of thing. So the amount of expenses that were in that agreement, I would argue definitely not unconscionable. That's what they agreed to, and that's what she needed and what she had to have with a $2,200 mortgage. That's in evidence. $2,200 some odd dollar mortgage, plus the utilities, and the taxes are probably going to cover that $3,000. And that'd be my position. That pretty much covers the $3,000. Then all he's got to do is pay for the boys' extracurriculars and things of that nature. It wasn't her money. This was for the children. So I'm asking for you to leave everything the way it is. Again, if you want to rework that, where she definitely has to do the mortgage, utilities, taxes, and pay for it out of the spousal support, if that's unclear, then by all means make that ruling. We don't have a problem with that, because that was the intention all along in those two paragraphs. But I appreciate your time today to hear.
It's clear he had an attorney representing him at the time. Testimony was that the plaintiff in this case knew that he had an attorney representing him, and my client said that his attorney reached out to ask if service could be had. And Your Honor pointed out something that I'd pointed out early on direct, that she threatened him to sign this. It was absolutely extortion, and those were absolutely threats. He can't pay these amounts. The math is not mathing in this. Just isn't. He cannot live off the little bit of money that he has left at the end of the month. She takes some issue with FMLA. Well, she didn't take some issue with it for the 5 years they were married that he was on it. And lastly, and kind of one of the most important points, is that there's misrepresentations all over the place. The agreements, the parenting plan does not make sense. The MDA does not make sense. The parenting plan misstates what income he has. He never made $120,000, ever. But it has him as income at $120,000. The MDA is wrought with inaccuracies and contradictions all throughout it. I'd ask that these matters be set aside.
I know it's late. I'm going to take a short recess and review my notes before I come back and give you my ruling. We'll stand in recess for a short period.
Back in session. Seated.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I have considered all of the evidence in this case, and now we'll give you the benefit of my findings and conclusions. And this is a Rule 60.02 motion, which is made by Mr. Dunham in an effort to try to set aside the final decree and parenting plan that was entered in this case. Tennessee Code Annotated 364103 makes an affirmative obligation on this court to make sure that any approval of a marital dissolution agreement, for example, contains a finding or is a finding of this court that and I'm going to pull the statute up just to make sure that I'm quoting it correctly, but it requires this court to make an affirmative finding that the property division and so forth is all equitable. Let me refer you specifically to the statute. In an irreconcilable differences divorce, which is what this is, 364103 subsection B requires the following: no divorce shall be granted on the grounds of irreconcilable differences unless the court affirmatively finds in its decree that the parties have made adequate and sufficient provision for, by written agreement, for the custody and maintenance of any children of the marriage and for the equitable settlement of any property rights between the parties. If the court does not affirmatively find that the agreement is sufficient or equitable and the cause The cause shall be continued by the court to allow further disposition by the petitioners. If both parties are present, then they can ratify any amendments and so forth. Problem here is that the issue that has been raised is that the marital dissolution agreement does not contain an equitable and an equitable distribution of the settlement of the property rights of the parties. That's the allegation. The issues that this court finds to be present are as follows: that Mr. Denham was represented by counsel, Ms. Jennifer Roberts, at the time, and he, in fact, had retained her prior to any of the execution of these documents, that he was represented by counsel, and that fact was made known to Mrs. Dunham and her attorney, and that while he was represented by counsel, he could not reach his attorney due to her mother's serious health issues, and therefore he could not consult with her, but that nonetheless he was at that time represented by Ms. Roberts. During the time that he was represented by Ms. Roberts, Mrs. Dunham, as exhibited as I've referred to in exhibit number A6, that was made an exhibit of a text message, that the court finds that Mrs. Dunham communicated to Mr. Dunham certain threats of possible criminal prosecution that would result if he continued to resist a settlement, and that those statements were made in an effort to coerce Mr. Dunham to agree to the terms of the agreement that she wanted. There was contradictory testimony in this case regarding whether or not she actually threatened to withhold visitation with the minor children, but there was also contradictory testimony as to whether or not he was presented with the entire agreement that was drafted by her, or whether he was given an opportunity to review the entire agreement, or whether it was just a signature page. He testified that it was just a signature page. She testified that it was the entire agreement. The court nonetheless finds that despite that contradiction, that the marital dissolution agreement itself contains significant contradictory language regarding his financial obligations. That language is set forth in the agreement regarding his obligations about the mortgage that was brought up, that the husband on page 4 of the agreement, and in paragraph 4 of the agreement on page 4, it states the following: the husband shall be responsible for the mortgage payment, utilities, and taxes on the marital residence until such time as the wife can refinance the marital residence in her name only. The wife shall have up to 10 years to refinance the marital residence. That language requires Mr. Dunham to pay the mortgage and expenses, utilities, and taxes on that residence for up to a period of 10 years. That's the clear language that's set forth. In the following portions, under paragraph 6, the spousal support or alimony provisions, it states the following, that, and I'm going to skip on down rather than state that. It goes on to say that he will pay the $1,500, and I'm referring to paragraph 6 of the spousal support or alimony. He will pay $1,500 biweekly on the first day of December 2023 for 3 months, and then $825 biweekly thereafter, continue until the youngest child reaches the age of 18, who graduates from high school, the latter of which, whichever is the later, to which shall cover the cost of mortgage, utilities, and taxes on the marital residence. This court finds that that language, as Mr. Hawley and his client may want to try to interpret it, is contradictory to the language that was previously quoted. There's nothing in that language that this court can clearly see that that she was going to be obligated to use the payments that he was to make to cover the cost of insurance, cover the cost of the mortgage, utilities, and taxes on this marital residence. So I find that to be a contradiction that clearly creates problems for the marital dissolution agreement's enforcement. In addition to that, the court finds that the testimony and the proof before the court is that the marital dissolution, the parenting plan in the calculation of child support was based upon an income of $10,000 a month to Mr. Dunham, and that the proof has been that there was never any time during his employment that he made $10,000 a month. And therefore, that in and of itself constitutes a fatal error to the calculation of child support. Based upon all of those facts, the court is of the opinion that the equitable situation would be to consider the Rule 60 motion. And I would quote you the Beeson versus Beeson, which is a Tennessee Court of Appeals decision in 120 Southwest 3rd, 833. In that case, the court found that there was a Rule 60 motion to correct an error in a divorce in a qualified domestic relations order and a marital dissolution agreement in a case that awarded the wife more than what she was entitled to out of an award of a retirement account that the husband had, and that was a proper application of the Rule 60 to correct that error. This court is of the opinion that Rule 60 provides a relief in this case to Mr. Dunham, and therefore the court grants the Rule 60 motion that he has filed and sets aside the final decree of divorce, the marital dissolution agreement, and the parenting plan, and reinstates this case on the accurate document, on the active docket of the court. The student will draw the order that reflects the court's ruling, and we'll send it to Mr. Hawley for his review and approval. That concludes our business for today. The court stands adjourned.
I am so glad the judge saw it this way. That the judge saw how inequitable and how manipulative that mom is. I mean, she played him, and she played him good. I mean, that is horrible. This is supposed to be the father of your children that you're doing this to. That, I know I'm not supposed to say much, but that is pretty low in my book. So that's about as far as I'm going to say. I have more, but I can't say it. So thank you guys so much for watching this total marathon. And I had so many internet problems. My internet kept going in and out, in and out, in and out. And it was driving me nuts. So hopefully I'll get it all out tonight. You'll be able to watch the whole thing, both parts. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.